One of the most powerful parts of C is working with files. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to create files, and the next tutorial I'll show you how to write data to them, and in the following tutorial I'll show you how to read data from files. Now we're going to go back to our handy C reference library, and under standard input and output library, all of our functions for working with files are included. And what we need is the fopen command, which will open a file, and it opens what's called a file handle, and that is a file pointer. It's actually a variable of file data type, and this is used for reading and writing to files. So the fopen command, the file open command, takes a file name to work with and the mode that you're going to be using the file in, and that's just a string. And R is if we want to just read this file. W is for writing, and notice that if the file already exists, it'll be truncated to 0 length. So if the file already exists and we open it in W mode for writing, the file will be blanked out, and if it doesn't exist, it will create a new file. A will append any data that you write to the end of the file. Anything with a B we don't need to worry about right now. R plus is for reading and writing, and W plus is for reading and writing, except that it will truncate the file to 0 or create a new file if it doesn't exist. And A plus is for reading and writing, but it will append to the end of the file when you read or write. And those are the only ones that we'll be working with in this tutorial. You can look at the other ones yourself, but they're not as commonly used. Okay, so let's use this fopen function here to create a file. So the first thing we're going to need is a variable of file pointer data type. So file, and we'll just call it FH, which stands for file handle. Alright, so now FH is equal to fopen, and we can open any file here, and we're just going to create a new file. So we're going to open test.txt, and we're going to open it in W mode, which is for writing, and if the file doesn't exist, it will be created. Now, the fopen function returns a pointer, and as we learned about a couple of tutorials ago, if there was an error, this will return null. So we have to test FH to see if it's equal to null, and if it's equal to null, we will give an error message, because we can't use the file until we've checked to make sure that it's not equal to null, because if it is null, we can't use it in the rest of our program. So let's write an if statement. If it's equal to null, we are just going to print out a message. There we go. And now that we're on the topic here, since we're using the printf command, which is included in the standard library, we need to include that as well before we run this. There we go. And the one thing that we need to do, if the file handle is null, if it didn't open the file, we need to exit out of the program. And we can exit out of this entire program by using the exit command. We could actually just use a return command here, because the main is actually a function. We could just return out of it. But it's common practice to use the exit command, which is just a function called exit. And the exit, it's asking for a status here. And 0 means that it returned successfully. 1 means that an error occurred. So usually you'll do exit 1, although it'll exit fine either way. Alright, so this tests for the error, and assuming that the function, our program is still running here, we know we're good. So let's just run this and see if it does create the file. Let me open the terminal, compile it. Apparently I made a mistake. Unknown escape sequence. I accidentally capitalized the \n, which has to be lowercase. Now I'll compile and run. Alright, we haven't gotten any error messages, and we have gotten no output from the program. So now let's run a dir command to display the contents of our directory and see if test.txt is located there. And here we have our executable file, our C file, and test.txt. So in this tutorial we successfully created a file, and since we have a little bit of time, I'm just going to show you one quick way of writing information to a file. And if you remember, we used the fgets function to read information from a file, and as I mentioned earlier, the standard input is actually just a file, or a file handle, and since fgets reads data from a file, fputs, like this, writes information to the file. The first thing we give it is a string, and the second thing we give it is the name of the file handle or file stream, and that's fh. So this should write the data to our file. So let's compile this and run it, and then open our file and see if there's anything inside of it. Alright, so let's just type the name of the file. It opens in Notepad, and it has hello world. Alrighty, so hopefully in this tutorial you've learned how to create files and to write data to files. And in the next tutorial I'm going to show you how you can read data from files. It's only a little bit different than it is reading from the terminal, but it's still important to know how to do it. Alright, so I'll see you then.